This is Jersey's news commentary channel. According to a report by Yicai, starting on May 1, 2026, China will implement zero tariffs on imports from 53 African countries that maintain diplomatic relations with Beijing. Through upgraded Green Channel facilitation measures, China says it will open its market wider to African products, promote their entry into China, and help African nations increase income. How grand and generous that sounds. In reality, Beijing's zero-tariff policy toward these 53 African countries is essentially a political and diplomatic projectile wrapped in the sugarcoating of concessions. Over the past decade, China-Africa relations have often been portrayed as a model of South-South cooperation. Yet in practice, they have long been accompanied by criticism of trade imbalances. Africa exports relatively limited resources to China, while China exports far more industrial goods and engineering projects to Africa. As Western countries increase investment and diplomatic engagement across Africa, Beijing needs a new narrative to repackage its role and image on the continent. Zero tariffs provide exactly such a symbolic tool. The policy's fiscal cost is relatively limited and manageable, yet in terms of messaging it helps construct an image of China's market as fully open. From a diplomatic perspective, this move resembles a gesture-driven concession rather than a genuine restructuring of economic relations. Why announce zero tariffs for Africa now? Because in recent years global supply chains have been rapidly reorganizing. The United States and Europe have actively promoted de-risking, while China faces stricter trade and technology restrictions in some of its traditional markets. Under this special backdrop, strengthening economic ties with Africa is not merely about expanding new trade partnerships, it is also a strategy of geopolitical balancing. Another background factor is the growing criticism over trade imbalances. Some African policy research institutions have long argued that Africa captures relatively little value added in China-Africa trade and benefits less from industrialization. By lowering import tariffs, Beijing can emphasize, at least in the realm of public opinion, that it is offering greater market access to African products, thereby softening and countering these criticisms. Therefore, this policy functions first and foremost as a diplomatic narrative rather than a purely economic instrument. The message it sends to Africa is that China is open. The message it sends to the international community is that China remains a partner of the Global South. However, historical experience suggests that policies of this kind tend to achieve more success in the political and diplomatic arena than in economic transformation. The reason is simple: changes in trade structures depend on industrial capacity and market demand, not on a single tariff measure. In other words, the real value of zero tariffs may not lie in trade statistics themselves, but in the new framework of international political and diplomatic storytelling that they help construct.